The issue is the ability for the mature personality to hold two opposing contradictory thoughts together at once and realize that both of them are valid and both are true in a dynamic tension. Okay. Now, that dynamic tension is one of the ways that we psychologists and everybody else experiences. You might not know the name for it as a dynamic tension, but we experience the reality of people who can't do this. Okay. And we call those immature personalities. In fact, sometimes we actually have them in a category called character disorders because the inability to do this actually leads to a host of other problems. And the ability is, can we hold two contradictory opposing thoughts together at the same time versus splitting? Okay. Splitting is when we can't hold both of them, we go to one side or the other. You've all heard the term borderline personality disorder. Well, there's a lot of hallmarks to that categorization of, identity formation and how somebody behaves and all of that. But one of the things at the heart of it is something we call splitting. And splitting is the inability to hold this dynamic tension together. Let me give you the maturity arc of this, right? You take a baby, go interview a baby and ask them, how's your day going? You don't ever hear, well, some things are pretty good and other things are not so good. Mom, she was on time a few times today, but other times she was kind of late, and I lied here and I was wet and cold, and but the milk was good later. And you see, they don't do that. They can't hold those together. If they're happy, they're happy. They're in a milk coma. They're wasted. They're drunk on milk, right? And they're ba 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 ba, and everything's wonderful until it's not. And then if whoever's feeding them is a little late, they don't, go, well, they've done a pretty good job, but I wish I could get it. They go, everything's all bad. So it's gone from all good to all bad. Okay. It's not both good and bad. As they get older, and but by the way, developmentally, what happens in their brain is they organize their world of relationships into good and bad people. And if somebody's pleasing them, they're good. If somebody's frustrating them, they're bad. Now, where do you see the classic examples of these? Marriage. Somebody falls in love. Oh, he's awesome. He's so wonderful. Or she's so wonderful. She's everything perfect and wonderful in honeymoon euphoria, milk coma at age 30, right? And they're drunk on love and it's all idealized and wonderful until there's some experience or experiences where there's disappointment or something's not as good as we imagine. And then they turn into all bad, all bad. And there's no way back to the other side. Or you see some people like this with their bosses or jobs. They go to work for this new or a church. It's so one until somebody slights them or does something that doesn't feel good, then that person turns into the devil and like they're all bad. And this dynamic tension is so important for us to get to a maturity place where a kid can realize the same parent that loves me and takes care of me is the same one that frustrates me. And that ability to love keeps somebody good who's also got imperfections and fails us in some way to keep them good and keep them good with their faults. That's the only way to have a long-term relationship is we're able to love imperfect people. So this ability to have a dynamic tension, I mentioned the corona thing. There are you look at the, if you look at the news, you're going to see two perspectives and sometimes, they're discussing it in mature ways. Sometimes people are rabidly attacking each other because there's two things that are true. There's a real health and security concern here. Nobody's making that up. And the people that are screaming about safety and security are right. And with all of that pain and all of those deaths and all of that awful misery, on the other side, there's also the need for other kinds of health as well besides corona. There are people that in total safety, other sick people that can't go to the doctor. I've talked to a lot of medical systems and consulting with them right now, and they're saying, it's not all one. We got cancer patients that need to be coming in, and they're not. And then you talk about the economy and 30 million plus people lose their jobs. I'm not trying to get political here. I'm trying to get psychological and say, both of these are true. And so generally, when people are in discussions like this, we all do our best when we cannot split and we can take a whole picture of a person when they fail us, of a situation. Right now, people think about the present and the future at the same time. When somebody fails us or they're frustrating us, to be able to hold on to love while they're frustrating us or failing us, that's going to be a key to getting to a good place. So, whoever's frustrating us today, let's remember we also love them for some good reasons. So, let's keep the love and solve the problem. And when we're failing, we're not all bad. Don't go into an all bad place when you fail. It's only one little piece of who you are, that one failure. No, you shouldn't be written off. So just remember, one of the phrases you hear a lot of times is the phrase, it's not either or, it's both and. And the more in a conflict that we can understand both sides of the story, both sides of the picture, why somebody's thinking or feeling like they're feeling, why I'm feeling or thinking like I'm feeling, and get curious about the other side and try to understand. The technical term for this in cognitive psychology from way back is something called assimilation and accommodation, where we can assimilate new data and perspectives from another side and accommodate that, make room in our head. You buy a new couch and bring it in your house. Well, you got to accommodate it. You got to rearrange the furniture. And sometimes we have to rearrange some of our thoughts to accommodate new perspectives. Now, again, don't, start blasting me with all sorts of political stuff here. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about thinking styles because we all need that. And we need to be mature, not immature. And that will help us. Okay. So, whatever you're facing today, try to keep a dynamic tension in perspective. We want to have fun today. We also got to save for tomorrow. We want to address a problem with somebody today. We also got to love them tomorrow. So, how we address the problem today and keeping them good is going to have a lot to do with how tomorrow goes. So, good and bad. So, remember, dealing with imperfect people, sometimes a hard place to live, but it's the only place we can have a relationship. I often think of God, God's perfect. We're not. If he would only have relationships with perfect people, then he couldn't have relationships with the very ones he made. So he had to solve that problem. He had to forgive imperfect people and love them and try to make them good, try to make them better. So remember this in your next conflict. And remember this as you look at yourself. Okay. Dynamic tensions, keeping things all held at one time. All right. You see this all over the place, all over the place. We all live with it.